Une sorte de satellite de la Chine. Qu'est-ce qu'on peut répondre à cela?
Jamais.
Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything.
Yeah, not really.
Horseshit.
Thanks again for tuning in, guys. This is my new and improved channel, Realpolitik, with your host, Michael Gallus. So in this week's video, I wanted to explain why sports and politics typically don't mix, or at least mix well, and how they're categorized in three different topics. So one topic would be individual, the other would be factional, and then the other would be national. So an example of individual would obviously be like Colin Kaepernick. Factional, you can have maybe Zenit St. Petersburg. You can have Olympiacos associated with conservatism in Greece. You even have like Israeli communist teams, even like Union Berlin. They're known as a conservative team in Germany. And then national, this is just more obvious. You know, you can have national teams for the Olympics, different sports, maybe like Colombia for soccer. Then there could always be, you know, situations where geopolitics and sports actually intertwine. So a good example would be when England and Argentina played each other in the 1986 FIFA World Cup after Great Britain defeated the Argentines in the Falklands War in 1982. As you can imagine, both countries had bad publicity when their fans were fighting on the streets before and after the games, with Argentine fans stealing Union Jack flags, which would later be flown at Boca Junior games in Argentina.
There'll be tension from their side because they lost the war. We won it, so there won't be no tension on that. The real cause of the trouble, however, was the...
But really, how does a team become successful? You know, namely, it's good scouting, good coaching, and good training. So money has to be in ample supply to make all three viable and efficient. So let's think of some examples where individual activism led to a windfall of funding. And the first would be Colin Kaepernick. I'm sure you all know the story with Colin Kaepernick. He was adopted by a white family and grew up in the upper middle class. He was an above average quarterback who relied on his speed and mobility to draw defenders towards the line of scrimmage and set up play action passing. However, the league adjusted to the read option, and Kaepernick's style of play was rendered not as effective and underperformed as a result. Some critics would argue he took a knee to also re-energize his career, in addition to bringing about awareness of police brutality. His individual activism spread across the league, and knees were commonplace during the national anthem. But according to polls, most American football fans are patriotic and support the flag. Nothing better depicts how offended football fans were than TV ratings. Ever since the media covered Kaepernick taking a knee, TV ratings have steadily dropped on an annual basis. The Super Bowl has suffered as well, but slightly increased last year. But overall, as you can see, individual activism can be divisive and turn fans away. Another good example of individual activism gone wrong on a smaller scale would be Henrik Mkhitaryan. Mkhitaryan is an Armenian soccer player currently playing for Roma in Italy while on loan with Arsenal. So while playing for Arsenal, he refused to play in the Europa League final due to tense relations with Azerbaijan since the final was being held in Baku. His team ended up losing 4-1 in the final. Let's move to factional. Let's say that your team or your supporters are supporters of one side of the spectrum politically. You might alienate then an athlete or even a coach who wouldn't want to sign with you or play for you because based on your politics. More violence might be associated with your supporters as a result as well. It's more than just hate for a logo or a city. It's going to be if you're communist or if you're capitalist. So that's going to affect things as well. So let's take a look at an example where factions created real violence. The ancient Roman and Byzantine empires had well-developed associations known as demes, which supported the different factions or teams under chariot racing. During the Byzantine period, The two teams with influence were the Blues and Greens. The circus factions had become a focus for various social and political issues, which is similar to what we're seeing today with the blending of social and political issues in this sport. The Byzantines combined aspects of street gangs and political parties, taking partisan positions on current issues, most notably theological problems or who was the true heir to the throne. They frequently attempted to coerce policies created by the emperors by shouting political demands between races through various chants and threats of violence or even intimidation itself. We can see this with the NBA wearing political statements or with other sports taking a knee during the national anthem or before games. In Constantinople, the imperial forces and guards in the city could not keep order without the cooperation of the circus factions, which in turn were backed by the aristocratic families of the city. Ultimately, violence broke out once the factions demanded Emperor Justinian to pardon 2 convicted murderers. When he only commuted the sentence to life in prison, they then declared a new emperor. In effect, the sporting fans were then attempting to run the government. This represents the absolute worst-case scenario of mixing politics with sports, where the two are enjoined. In the end, Justinian paid off the Blue faction and ordered his soldiers to attack the remaining rioters. About 30,000 people died, and Justinian successfully consolidated his power. Let this anecdote be a reminder as to why politics and sports can spiral out of control. Let's continue to move forward to the last category, national. What you are watching right here was an own goal scored by Andres Escobar in the 1994 World Cup against the United States. What you may not know was how this goal ultimately had Escobar killed in Colombia. So, how did this happen? Colombian soccer saw a golden age from the late 80s to the early 90s due to money pouring into the sport from its drug lords. Drug lords saw soccer clubs as avenues for money laundering, and Pablo Escobar was financially backing Medellin-based Atlético Nacional, while the Cali cartel backed América de Cali.
Atlético Nacional y Deportivo Independiente Medellín a esta noble campaña.
El narcotráfico es un fenómeno muy grande. Es un pulpo que abarca todo. Entonces, si vos ves que hay narcotráfico en política.
So you might ask yourself, what do drug traffickers in soccer have to do with politics? Well, once it became quite apparent how far the situation had gone, President Gaviria made it a point to eliminate the cartels from soccer once and for all. Andres Escobar also championed the idea of changing Colombia's international image of being a narco state into something more positive. He and President Gaviria therefore tied narco politics of the era with the national team, and both saw it as a unifying movement. However, this led to Escobar being murdered back in Colombia after the World Cup. With drug money leaving the sport, the level of play drastically fell off as a result. As you can see, Colombia was ranked 4th in the world in 1996, but by 2008, they weren't even in the top 50. From all these examples, it's quite evident that mixing politics with sports can be a dangerous game. Teams and leagues can lose revenue and affect their ability to be successful. Organizations and clubs should be asking themselves, why take the risk? Why hurt one of the few apolitical avenues of society that we have left? Hopefully, some can see these stories as a reminder of how adverse politics can be when mixed with sports. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and as always, I'll catch you on the next one.